In our modern world, wow, we are absolutely swimming in information. I mean, articles, research papers, endless online content. It's just this constant deluge, isn't
It
it?
really is. Everywhere you look.
So how do we possibly make sense of it all without feeling completely, overwhelmed?
That's the million-dollar question.
And maybe more importantly, how do we actually pull out the truly important insights, those little nuggets of knowledge that help us be genuinely well-informed instead of just like skimming the surface?
Right.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into a really timeless guide that helps you become a master reader. It offers a kind of powerful shortcut, actually, to navigate this information age.
That's exactly right. Our mission today, it isn't about speed reading just for facts, It's much more about cultivating the art of intelligent reading for a much deeper understanding.
Deeper understanding. Okay.
And it's more relevant now than ever, I think, despite, widespread literacy and just the sheer volume of text, plus that big shift towards nonfiction we see everywhere. Many people really struggle to truly extract meaning from complex texts. It's an interesting observation from our source material that many readers, even those with higher education, often operate at what's effectively, well, a sixth grade reader level when they're faced with challenging material.
Okay, hang on. That's a pretty strong claim. A sixth grade reader level, even with higher ed, that feels a bit counterintuitive.
It does, yeah.
What's driving that? Is it just laziness, or is there something else going on in our modern world?
It's fascinating, actually. The classic guide we're drawing from, it highlights how intellectual positions, views, opinions, they're incredibly well packaged for us today.
Packaged? How so?
Well, they come complete with, ingenious rhetoric and carefully selected data points, all designed to make it seem really easy for you to make up your own mind.
Oh, okay. I see.
But as this book points out, rather wryly, I might add, often you're just sort of inserting a packaged opinion into your mind, somewhat like inserting a cassette into a cassette player.
Huh. Like intellectual plug and play.
Exactly. You then push a button and, quote, play back that opinion. You perform acceptably without having to engage in, well, genuine thought.
Yeah.
And this whole phenomenon makes the need for better reading skills much greater today than it was, say, decades ago.
So it's basically intellectual fast food. Easy to consume, maybe looks good.
Pretty much.
But doesn't that make information more accessible for busy people? I mean, is there a counter-argument that maybe this packaging actually helps us stay informed, even if it's, like you said, at the cost of genuine thought?
That's a totally valid question. And the argument the source makes is that while it feels efficient, this kind of passive consumption often just leads to a really superficial understanding.
Okay.
We become consumers of conclusions rather than active participants in the whole intellectual journey.
Right.
And this brings us right to the fundamental concept we're exploring today. What does it truly mean to engage in active reading?
Active reading. Okay, that sounds almost redundant. I mean, surely all reading is active, isn't it?
You're right, you're right. All reading is active to some degree. You can't read with your eyes, frozen and your mind totally asleep.
Right.
But the goal here is more active reading. Think of it like this. The writer is a pitcher, and the reader is a catcher.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Successful communication is an act of cooperation, right?
Yeah.
And the reader's skill is absolutely essential for actually catching what the writer is throwing.
Makes sense.
The aim is to elevate your understanding by your own intellectual effort without needing external help. This is what the book calls pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
Okay, doing the work yourself.
Exactly. It's the kind of intense, demanding reading a truly challenging book deserves. Think of it like intellectual heavy lifting. You wouldn't expect to build muscle just by looking at weights, would you?
No, definitely not.
You have to actually lift them. This type of reading focuses on how to make books teach you well, especially when you're reading without a teacher right there guiding you.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so our source presents reading as a skill. And it's developed through 4 distinct levels, each one building on the last. So where do we start this journey? Level 1.
We start right at the beginning, yeah. With elementary reading. This is that initial jump, right? From non-literacy to basic literacy, usually mastered in elementary school.
The stuff we all remember, hopefully.
Right, and it's almost magical, really, when you think about it, how most humans, usually before age 7, perform this astounding intellectual feat of discovering meaning in symbols on a page.
It really is incredible when you put it like that.
This level progresses from basic vocabulary growth, which leads to what's called functional literacy, reading a traffic sign or a simple form,
Okay.
all the way up to mature elementary reading. That's usually achieved by 8th or maybe 10th grade, making someone capable of, say, high school level work.
Right.
But the critical takeaway here, and this is important, is that while we emphasize basic literacy, the higher levels of reading have been significantly slighted, is the word the source uses.
Slighted, meaning neglected.
Yeah, neglected. It's kind of a sobering thought that a lot of what passes for remedial reading in colleges often just brings students up to this fundamental elementary level.
Wow. Okay, so that first level is crucial, but maybe not sufficient for complex material.
Hmm.
So what's next? I think you mentioned something about tackling that pile of books.
Yes, we've all been there, staring at a stack, wondering how we'll ever get through them.
Definitely.
Well, our source introduces this brilliant, often overlooked secret weapon for that. It's the second level, inspectional reading.
Inspectional reading. Okay, sounds intriguing. How does this systematic skimming, as you called it, actually work? How does it save us time and energy?
It's truly a game changer, and one that many people just skip entirely. Inspectional reading is essentially, systematic skimming or pre-reading.
Pre-reading, okay.
Its huge value lies in quickly gaining enough, let's say, superficial knowledge to figure out if a book truly deserves your deeper, more analytical time later on.
Right, triage for books.
Exactly. So many readers just mistakenly start a book on page 1 and plow steadily through it without even, glancing at the table of contents first. I'll admit I've been guilty of that myself sometimes.
Me too, definitely.
So for effective inspectional reading, there are a few key steps. First, read the preface. Seriously, it's often where the author lays out their aims, why they wrote the book.
Okay, preface first.
Second, study the table of contents. Think of it as your roadmap. Authors put considerable effort into creating it. Although, interestingly, the source notes some publishers today prefer less revealing ones, maybe to keep readers guessing a bit.
Huh. Keep you hooked.
Maybe. Third, if it has one, check the index. This helps you quickly estimate the range of topics and pinpoint crucial terms. See what gets mentioned a lot.
Good tip.
Fourth, read the publisher's blurb on the dust jacket, if there is one. Authors often summarize their main points right there. It's like a mini abstract.
The marketing copy, yeah. Sometimes useful.
Sometimes very useful. And finally, fifth, flip through the pages, dip in here and there, read a paragraph or two, and crucially, don't fail to read the last few pages, or at least the conclusion. Authors often sum up what they believe is new and important right at the end.
Okay, that's a very practical checklist. Be strategic. What about speed reading, though? That's often marketed as the ultimate shortcut, isn't it? Consume more books faster.
Yeah, the book has a really nuanced view on speed reading. It emphasizes that true, good speed reading isn't about raw speed at all costs. It's actually about learning to read at many different speeds.
Variable speed.
Exactly. You vary your rate based on the material's nature, its complexity. The real problem, the source suggests, isn't usually reading speed itself. It's more often a lack of comprehension skills when you're faced with those difficult but rewarding books.
So faster isn't always better.
Not at all. The ideal is crystal clear. Every book should be read no more slowly than it deserves, and no more quickly than you can read it with satisfaction and comprehension. It's about finding the right speed for that book and your purpose.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so inspectional reading helps us choose wisely. Now, this isn't just about reading more. You said it's about unlocking a book's deepest secrets. The third level, analytical reading. This sounds like where the real work begins.
It absolutely is.
You mentioned it transforms you into a demanding intellectual partner, equipping you to not just read the words, but to actually absorb the author's thoughts. This is where the real deep dive happens, right? Where you learn to genuinely wrestle with ideas and make them your own.
Precisely. You put that very well. Books that seem, over your head,
Well,
they can be incredibly wearying if you lack the skill to, as the book says, reach up to them and pull yourself up to their level.
yeah, that feeling of just not getting it.
Exactly. And one of the core techniques here is marking a book intelligently.
Writing in books, my favorite part.
Mine too. This involves practical things like underlining major points, maybe using vertical lines in the margin to emphasize longer passages you want to come back to, or perhaps placing a star sparingly, mind you, next to the dozen or so most important statements in the whole book.
Okay.
And maybe most critically, it means writing in the margins. Record your questions as they pop up, summarize complicated discussions in your own words, or even outline major points right there on the page.
So actively talking back to the book.
Yes. And these notes generally fall into two categories. Structural notes, which are about the book's outline, how it's put together,
Like the skeleton.
and conceptual notes, which deepen your understanding of the author's actual ideas and maybe even your own thoughts sparked by them. Forming this habit of reading well, it's like learning any other complex skill, really. Think about, say, a musician practicing scales and chords separately.
Okay.
Then eventually they seamlessly weave them together into a beautiful melody. Practice makes perfect, and what start as separate acts eventually coalesce into a smoothly running whole.
That's a great analogy. So it becomes second nature over time. Okay, let's break down the actual rules of analytical reading then. Rule number 1 is about pigeonholing a book. What exactly does that mean?
Pigeonholing simply means classifying the book by its kind. What type of book is it?
Okay.
This involves distinguishing, say, fiction from expository works books that explain things like history, philosophy, science, social science.
Got it. Fiction versus nonfiction, basically, but maybe more granular.
Exactly. And even the title itself can be your first clue. For instance, the source mentions Darwin's Origin of Species people, often mistakenly add "the" to the title, which subtly changes the focus. Or Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which actually starts by describing the empire at its peak, the age of the Antonines, not its downfall.
So pay attention to the details right from the cover.
Definitely. Paying attention to these subtle cues helps you understand the author's true intent and the context right from the start. And within those expository works, a really key distinction is between theoretical books, which aim for knowledge, understanding things as they are.
Like science or philosophy, maybe?
Often, yes. They might appeal to common sense, like philosophy often does, or special experience, like science. And then there are practical books, which aim for action, understanding what works, how to do something.
Like a self-help book or a political treatise?
Could be, yes. Books telling you how things ought to be or how to achieve a certain result.
Okay, so we've classified the book, we know what kind it is, but how do we get the big picture, the author's grand vision, the main point? Our source lays out 3 crucial rules that help us map out the book's blueprint. What comes next after pigeonholing?
Right. So after you know the kind of book, you really start to dismantle and rebuild it for yourself.
Okay.
Rule 2 is to state the unity of the whole book. Try to capture its essence in a single sentence or maybe a short paragraph. This means finding the book's overarching theme or main point.
Like the thesis statement.
Exactly. Think of how Aristotle famously summarized Homer's Odyssey. A certain man is absent from home for many years. He boiled down that huge epic to its core plot.
Wow, okay, that's concise.
It is. Now, for expository books, authors might actually state this unity for you in the preface. Think Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations or Darwin's Origin. But ultimately, the obligation of finding that unity, that belongs to you, the reader.
Okay, find the core message. What's rule 3?
Rule 3 is to outline the parts of the book, identify its major divisions, its sections, and how they relate to each other. It's like outlining the articles and sections of, say, the U.S. Constitution. You see how the argument builds.
So this is where those structural notes you mentioned come in handy.
Precisely, mapping the structure. And then rule 4 is to define the author's problems. This means figuring out what specific questions the author is trying to answer or solve in the book.
The questions driving the work.
Yes. Nailing this helps you grasp the book's unity and its skeletal structure much more completely. And the book makes a really important point here. Avoid what's called the intentional fallacy.
Intentional fallacy.
Yeah, it means focus squarely on what the work itself is trying to achieve, the problems it's trying to solve in the text. Don't get sidetracked trying to guess the author's personal life or secret motivations behind writing it.
Stick to the text.
Exactly. It keeps your reading objective and focused on the ideas presented, not on amateur psychology about the author.
That's a really important distinction, keeping us grounded in the text itself. Okay, so we've got the structure, the main point, the problems. Now we move to the interpretive rules, really getting at the author's message. Rule 5 is coming to terms. What's that about?
Coming to terms, this is crucial. It means recognizing that a term isn't just a word. Words can have many, many meanings, right?
Definitely. Ambiguity.
Exactly. So, to achieve true communication between you and the author, you have to overcome unresolved ambiguity. This rule applies mainly to expository works, books trying to convey knowledge. It's different for, say, poetry, which can be intentionally ambiguous and suggestive. The key here is to discover the meaning of an important, maybe unfamiliar word by using the meanings of all the other words in the context that you do understand. It's like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. The surrounding pieces help you figure out the missing one.
Using context clues, essentially.
Yes, but in a very active way. Think of it as moving from understanding an author's general vocabulary, the words they use, to grasping their specific terminology, the precise meanings they assign to their most important words, like how Euclid defines a point as that which has no part. Very specific.
Okay, focus on the key words and how the author uses them. So it's about context, not just rushing to a dictionary for every single word.
Precisely, though dictionaries have their place, as we'll see.
Okay, now Rule 6 and 7 build on that. Understanding sentences and arguments.
Exactly. They take it to the next level. Rule 6 is to mark the most important sentences and discover the propositions they contain.
Propositions, like the core statements being made.
Yes. And be aware, a single sentence, especially a complex one, can contain multiple propositions, maybe even conflicting ones, if the terms shift meaning within the sentence.
Tricky.
It can be, and the best test of whether you truly understand a proposition, the source insists, state in your own words.
Ah, the classic teacher advice.
It's classic for a reason. If you can only repeat the author's exact words, you've likely received the words, but not the underlying thought or knowledge. The source warns against falling into verbalism, just using words without regard for the thoughts they should convey. Essentially, parroting without comprehension.
Right, you haven't truly internalized it. What about Rule 7?
Rule 7 is to locate or construct the basic arguments. Arguments aren't always neatly packaged in single paragraphs. Authors vary hugely in style. Some lay it out very logically, others weave it more subtly.
So you have to be a bit of a detective.
You do. The reader has to identify the connection between sentences that together form an argument, supporting a conclusion. And here the book reminds us, wonder is the beginning of wisdom. Asking questions, probing the text, is essential for gaining real insight.
Keep asking why and how.
Exactly. And a careful reader often has to make implicit steps in an argument explicit. Authors sometimes leave steps out, assuming the reader will fill them in, or sometimes it's a trick used by orators or propagandists to mislead you by skipping over a weak link in their reasoning.
That's a really sharp point about spotting those hidden or implicit steps. Very useful. Okay, finally, Rule 8 ties all this analytical work together. How does it do that?
Rule 8 brings it full circle. It's to determine which of the author's problems he has solved and which he has not. And as to the latter, decide which the author knew he had failed to solve.
So judging the author against their own goals.
Precisely. This rule connects your interpretation of the content right back to your initial outlining of the book's structure and aims, Rules 2, 3, and 4. It's about you, the active reader, holding the author accountable for what they set out to do. Did they deliver on their promises? Did they solve the problems they posed?
Okay, that's a very complete framework for digging deep. So once you've gone through all that hard work to really understand a book, how do you engage with it critically?
Camply.
Fairly. Our source calls this talking back, right?
Yes, talking back. This is where reading truly transforms into a kind of conversation, but it's a polite conversation initially. The essential virtue here is teachability.
Teachability, being open to learn.
Exactly. The book gives us this fantastic motto adapted from Francis Bacon. Read not to contradict and confute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider.
Weigh and consider. I like that.
It means you must hear and understand the author fully before you presume to judge them. A vital step here is suspending judgment. That doesn't mean agreeing. It means taking the position that something, a claim, or an argument has not been shown yet. You're waiting for proof.
That's interesting because in our culture, it often feels like everyone has an opinion instantly, and maybe that every opinion is equally valid.
And that's precisely the challenge the source takes on. It pushes back hard against the notion that everything is just a matter of opinion. It argues that true knowledge can be communicated and that disagreements can often be resolved, or at least clarified, by removing misunderstanding or of ignorance.
So disagreement isn't the same as misunderstanding.
Not at all. And the ideal reader, the source insists, should be as prepared to change their own mind based on the conversation with the author as they are hoping to change another's. It's about intellectual honesty.
Okay, so be open, understand first, suspend judgment. But if you do find grounds for disagreement after careful understanding, what are the specific, actionable ways to critique a book fairly? How do you talk back constructively?
Right. The book outlines 4 primary criteria for disagreement. These are really powerful tools for objective criticism, not just saying, I don't like it.
Okay, what are they?
First, you can show wherein the author is uninformed. This means they lack relevant knowledge that might have changed their conclusions. Think of, say, Darwin writing before Mendel's work on genetics was known, or Gibbon writing about Rome before later archaeological discoveries.
Okay, so they were missing a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. Second, you can show wherein the author is misinformed. This is different. It means they assert something that is demonstrably contrary to known fact. It's a direct factual error. The source gives examples like Spinoza thinking democracy was more primitive than monarchy, or Aristotle having incorrect information about female reproduction.
So misinformation versus lack of information.
Correct. Third, you can show wherein the author is illogical. The reasoning is unsound. Maybe they commit a fallacy, or they fail to draw the proper conclusions from their own stated premises. This is a flaw in their thinking process, distinct from their knowledge base.
Failure of logic.
Yes. And finally, fourth, you can show wherein the author's analysis or account is incomplete. This is presented as the only valid reason to only partially agree or to continue suspending judgment. It means the author didn't fully resolve the problems they set out to solve, or they didn't explore all the necessary aspects or consequences of their subject.
So you didn't finish the job is a valid critique.
If you can demonstrate how it's incomplete, yes, it's perhaps the most common valid criticism of great books. They took things far, but maybe not all the way.
These 4 points are incredibly clear. Uninformed, misinformed, illogical, or incomplete. And it's important to remember, as you said, these analytical reading rules describe an ideal performance. The real goal is quality reading, not just quantity, right?
Absolutely critical. As our guide really drives this home, a person who has read widely but not well deserves to be pitied rather than praised. You must learn to read every book according to its merits. Don't use a sledgehammer on a delicate work or try to dissect a poem like a scientific treatise.
Read appropriately for the book. Makes sense. Now, while the focus so far has been mostly on reading a book in itself, what the source calls intrinsic reading, sometimes we do need outside help, don't we? What are these extrinsic aids?
That's right. Extrinsic aids are basically anything outside the 4 corners of the book itself that can help you understand it better. The advice is always, do as much as you can by yourself first. Really wrestle with the text intrinsically.
Try hard on your own first.
Yes, but acknowledge that sometimes outside help is necessary for full understanding. This help might come from different kinds of relevant experience. The source distinguishes between common experience, the kind available to all of us just by being alive and conscious, which is relevant for understanding, say, fiction and philosophy.
Things everyone can relate to.
Right. And special experience, the kind that must be actively sought out, like laboratory experiments or field research or historical investigation. This is obviously more relevant for scientific or historical works. History, interestingly, kind of partakes of both common and special experience.
Okay, experience helps. What about using other books or even reference materials like dictionaries or encyclopedias?
Great question. Reading related books, especially in chronological order if possible, is incredibly valuable. The source beautifully describes this as joining a prolonged conversation among great authors who were themselves great readers, responding to and building on each other's ideas across centuries.
Like eavesdropping on the great minds.
Exactly. Then there are reference books, dictionaries, encyclopedias, atlases, etc. To use them well, the source says you need 3 things. Know what you want to know. You have to be able to ask an intelligible question.
Can't just wander aimlessly.
Right. Know where to find it, which kind of reference book is appropriate for your question, and know how that particular work is organized. You really should read the introduction to any reference book you plan to use seriously.
Read the instructions first.
Always good advice. Reference books primarily contain facts, Lincoln's birth date, the atomic number of gold, not typically opinions, arguments, or imaginative literature. Dictionaries are crucial for understanding the many possible meanings of words, helping you distinguish an author's general vocabulary from their specific, crucial terminology.
Sure.
And encyclopedias, even though experts might sometimes disagree on how to interpret facts, are designed to end disputes about basic matters of fact as quickly and permanently as possible. They provide a baseline of established knowledge.
That's a fascinating look at how external resources can enhance our reading without replacing the core analytical work. Now, how do these fundamental rules for analytical reading adapt when you approach different types of books, like those practical books you mentioned, or imaginative literature? It can't be a totally one-size-fits-all approach, can it?
You're absolutely right. It's not one size fits all. The approach needs to shift significantly depending on the genre and the author's purpose.
Okay, so how does it shift for, say, practical books?
For practical books, remember their ultimate aim is action in the world. They want you to do something or change something. So the adapted analytical questions become, what does the author want you to do? And how does he propose that you do this?
What's the goal and what's the plan?
Exactly. And here's the kicker. If you truly agree with a practical book, meaning you accept the ends as worthy and the means as effective, then consistency demands that you actually take action based on it. Agreement implies action.
That's a very clear distinction. Theoretical books and for understanding. Practical books demand action if you agree. Now, what about imaginative literature? Things like novels, plays, poems. We definitely don't read those for facts in the same way, do we?
Exactly right. Imaginative literature, novels, plays, poetry primarily aims to please or delight through the experience it creates, rather than directly teach knowledge or facts. Its kind of truth is often described as verisimilitude, plausibility, lifelikeness, not factual accuracy like in science or history.
Believability within its own world.
Precisely. So the key don'ts here are, don't criticize imaginative works using the standards of factual truth or logical consistency you'd apply to an argument. That's missing the point.
Okay.
The critical rule is, don't criticize it. Don't say whether you like it or dislike it, even until you fully appreciate what the author has tried to make you experience. You have to let the work wash over you first. Ultimately, you like or dislike fiction based on your experience of it. You don't agree or disagree with it in the same way you would an argument.
So, experience it first, judge later.
Mm.
How does this apply specifically to different forms? Like novels.
Good question. For stories, like novels, the source emphasizes the importance of finishing the story quickly, ideally in one sitting if possible, to grasp its overall unity, its shape. Stories, it notes, often provide a kind of poetic justice, a satisfying narrative structure that adjusts life's often chaotic and unjust reality.
They give shape to experience.
Yes. Then there are epics. Honored, but often the least read today, sadly. They're highly demanding, but they offer immense rewards. The source calls them the backbone of any serious reading program. Think Homer, Virgil, Dante, Milton. Real heavyweights.
Need commitment for those.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Plays are interesting because they should really be read as incomplete works. You, the reader, have to mentally stage them, visualize the action, hear the dialogue, and sometimes, especially with challenging verse like Shakespeare, you might even need to read puzzling passages aloud to catch the rhythm and meaning.
Become the director and actor in your head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the source highlights Greek tragedy's essence, often revolving around a lack of time for decisions, leading to those inevitable, dramatic, often catastrophic outcomes.
Fate closing in. And lyric poetry, that seems even more different.
Lyric poetry is perhaps the most compact form, defined simply as words arranged in a more or less orderly and disciplined way. The goal here is to comprehend its unity and its basic feeling or emotion, ideally by reading it through all at once, several times. You find the key words not just by definition, but by rhetorical discernment, paying close attention to rhythm, rhyme, repetition, the sequence of images and ideas.
It's about the sound and feel as much as the meaning.
Very much so. The source uses a great example, tracing the theme of love and time across poems by Shakespeare, Marvell, and MacLeish, showing how different poets tackle the same core human experiences. Rereading is absolutely key for poetry.
That's a fascinating shift in approach for fiction and poetry, focusing on experience, structure, feeling, rather than just factual truth or argument. It really makes you rethink how you might have been reading these genres. Okay, now what about something completely different again, like the practical worlds of history or current events? How do we read those well?
Right, shifting gears again. For history, if we define it narrowly as formal narrative accounts of the past, it differs from, say, a court case, because the witnesses are long dead and the rules of evidence are necessarily less stringent.
Can't cross-examine Julius Caesar.
Exactly. So the crucial rule here, the source argues, is to read more than one account of the same events, especially important or controversial ones, from different viewpoints if possible. This is the only way to get closer to the elusive truth. Think about the American Civil War. You need to read accounts from both Northern and Southern perspectives, and from later historians, too.
Get multiple angles.
Yes. History, when read well, can reveal universal patterns of human behavior. Think of Thucydides showing how political mistakes get repeated century after century. It suggests the possible in human affairs and can deeply affect how we think about current actions. And the same applies to things like authorized biographies, always be a bit skeptical, look for other sources.
Healthy skepticism. What about reading the news, current events, journalism? That's a daily challenge for most of us.
Huge challenge. When reading current events or journalism, perhaps the most important thing is to know who is writing, what outlet, what are their known biases, what kind of mind, as the source puts it, does the reporter have. You need to be aware of the filter the information is passing through.
Know the source.
Critically important. Also, watch out for special language, jargon, buzzwords, loaded terms like, well, communism back in the day, or other labels today that carry heavy emotional baggage. Question if the reporter truly knows or could know all the relevant facts, especially when dealing with secrets, government reports, or fast-breaking, chaotic situations.
Assume incompleteness, often.
It's a safe assumption, and be especially careful with condensations like news summaries. While they save time, they are particularly demanding because you have to actively infer what important details or nuances might have been left out in the shortening process.
That's critical advice for navigating today's media landscape. Okay, one more big category pair, science and mathematics and philosophy. These often feel like the most intimidating reads. Any specific advice there?
They certainly can feel intimidating. But for science and mathematics, the source actually encourages reading the great scientific classics themselves, Newton, Galileo, Darwin, Einstein. It argues they are not impossibly difficult if you make the effort, especially using the analytical rules we discussed.
Really? Not just textbooks?
Not just textbooks. The key analytical rule here is, again, focus on stating the problem the author was trying to solve. What question were they tackling? And appreciate the language. Lavoisier famously noted how improving the language of any science simultaneously improves the science itself. Precision matters immensely.
Language and thought intertwined.
Deeply. Think of Euclid's Elements. Reading it shows you beautifully how logical proofs build step by step, premise by premise, leading to those QED moments, which was to be demonstrated.
Ah, the logic chain.
Exactly. Popular science, while generally easier, still requires active engagement, especially with its implications. Think about books on the environmental crisis or the nature of atomic physics, or even mathematics itself. The source mentions Whitehead, calling math a major modern mystery, and how understanding how mathematicians think is valuable in itself.
So engage with the ideas, not just the results. What about philosophy?
Philosophy asks those big, sometimes childishly simple but profoundly difficult first-order questions, as the source calls them, questions about being, becoming, knowledge, good and evil, justice.
The fundamental stuff.
The absolute fundamentals. Modern philosophy can sometimes be challenging because it often asks second-order questions, questions about our questions or about language itself. But the core thing to remember is that philosophical questions are ultimately answered by thinking, by reasoning, not by running experiments or using scientific instruments.
The laboratory is the mind.
Beautifully put. Hints for reading philosophy include, again, finding the author's main questions, identifying their controlling principles or basic assumptions. These are often unstated and derived from common experience, unlike science, which relies on special experience, and examining the consistency of their arguments. The source also outlines different styles: Plato's dialogues, Aristotle's treatises, Spinoza's mathematical proofs, Aquinas' disputed questions. Nietzsche's aphorisms. Recognizing the style helps you read it better. And again, it strongly encourages reading other philosophers to participate in that centuries-long great conversation.
Wow, okay, that's a comprehensive tour through adapting analytical reading to different genres. It really underscores that reading isn't passive, it's an active adaptive skill. Now, we've hinted at it, but we finally arrived at the highest, most complex level of reading, topical reading. This involves reading many books about the same subject. This sounds like the absolute master level, the ultimate deep dive.
It truly is the pinnacle of active reading, yes. Syntopical reading is defined as a systematic process designed to arrive at a more complex and nuanced understanding of a subject than any single author, no matter how great, can provide on their own.
Going beyond any one book.
Exactly. Imagine trying to understand a huge, multifaceted topic like love. The concept, as the source points out, has an enormous range of reference across different authors throughout history. It could mean acquisitive desire for one, pure benevolence for another, an intellectual act for a third.
Right. Everyone defines it differently.
Precisely. So to achieve a syntopical understanding, you, the reader, need to be able to state what the subject is in a way that encompasses these varied conceptions, even if the authors themselves didn't use the same terms or even see themselves as talking about the exact same thing.
That sounds incredibly challenging. It almost feels like a paradox.
Yeah.
How do you even know which books are relevant to your subject if you haven't yet deeply explored it and defined it yourself? Where do you even start?
That's precisely the central problem, and it's why syntopical reading is so demanding. Our guide breaks down the process into two main stages to tackle exactly that challenge.
Okay. 2 stages. What's the first?
The first stage is surveying the field. This involves creating a tentative bibliography. You use library catalogs, maybe advice from experts, bibliographies you find in books you've already read on related topics. You cast a wide net initially.
Building a reading list.
Right. But then comes the crucial part of this first stage. You inspect all of those books on your tentative list, using those inspectional reading skills we talked about earlier: skimming preface, table of contents, index, conclusion.
Okay, the pre-reading step again.
Exactly. The goal here is twofold. First, to determine which books are actually relevant to your specific subject, narrowing down that big list. And second, this inspection process helps you refine your own initial understanding of the subject itself. The books start to teach you about the scope of the topic.
So the process itself helps define the subject. What's the second stage?
The second stage is syntopical reading proper. Once you have your refined bibliography, your list of truly relevant books, you dive in, but in a very specific way. There are several steps here. First, you inspect these books again, specifically looking for the most relevant passages. You're not necessarily reading every book cover to cover analytically at this stage. You're hunting for the sections, chapters, even paragraphs that directly address your subject and the questions you were asking.
Targeted reading across multiple books.
Precisely. Second, and this is maybe the most difficult step, you need to bring the authors to terms by constructing a neutral terminology.
Neutral terminology.
Meaning you create a set of terms, a common language, that applies across all the different authors, even if they use wildly different vocabularies themselves. You have to translate their diverse ways of speaking into your framework so you can compare their ideas fairly. It's recognizing that the same core idea can be expressed in very different words, much like translating between, say, French and English.
So you're the translator between authors. Wow.
In a sense, yes. Third, building on that neutral terminology, you frame a neutral set of questions. These are questions that you construct, rising out of your understanding of the subject. They might not be questions that any single author explicitly asked or answered in your terms, but they are questions which all the relevant authors can be interpreted as providing some kind of answer to within the scope of your subject.
Your questions posed to all authors.
Right. Fourth, using these neutral questions, you define the issues. An issue arises when there's a clear conflict of answers among authors to one of your key questions. You need to identify these points of disagreement, making sure the issue is truly joined, meaning the authors seem to understand the question in a similar enough way, but simply give contrary or incompatible answers.
Finding the core disagreement.
Exactly. And finally, fifth, and this is the crucial payoff step, you analyze the discussion. You order the questions and issues in a way that sheds maximum light on the subject. The goal here is not necessarily to find the final true answer or to definitively prove one author right and others wrong.
Not taking sides.
Ideally, no. The goal is to achieve what the source calls dialectical objectivity, looking at all sides of the issues fairly, understanding the relationships between the different viewpoints, maybe even identifying nuances or perspectives that none of the individual authors fully captured. This allows you, the syntopical reader, to make a unique contribution to understanding the subject simply by having orchestrated and analyzed this complex conversation.
That is incredibly demanding. Building your own framework, translating authors, defining issues, analyzing the whole debate objectively. What's the ultimate payoff for you, the listener, in taking on such a rigorous, almost monumental approach to reading.
It is monumental, and the rules for reading, particularly analytical and especially syntopical reading, really describe an ideal for achievement, right? A peak of intellectual engagement that maybe few fully reach consistently. But the striving is what matters. Interestingly, the source notes that the hardest books to read for many people are not necessarily the dense scientific or philosophical treatises. Often they are the great poetical works, like Homer or Dante.
Really? Why is that?
Because they deal with subjects the deepest human experiences, emotions, values that are inherently harder to write well about with clarity and depth, and they demand such profound imaginative and emotional engagement from the reader. The payoff for wrestling with any great book analytically, and especially for engaging syntopically, is achieving a level of mastery over complex ideas, a depth of understanding that few people ever attain through more passive forms of consumption.
A truly deeper understanding. Okay, so what does this all mean for you, the listener, as you navigate your own reading life? Our source brings up a really powerful, thought-provoking challenge near the end. The desert island test.
Yes, the desert island test.
If you could only take, say, 10 books to a desert island for the rest of your life, which ones would you choose?
It's a fascinating exercise, isn't it? The source suggests that performing this exercise honestly reveals what you truly believe helps your life and growth of the mind. What books would sustain you intellectually and spiritually?
What really matters to your mind's growth?
Exactly. And tied to this, it offers a really profound warning. The mind, like muscles, can atrophy if it is not actively used, stretched, challenged.
Use it or lose it, applied to thinking.
Pretty much. External stimuli, like just passively watching television or listening to the radio, or maybe today scrolling social media feeds, are described almost like artificial props, even drugs that might provide temporary stimulation but eventually lose their effect, potentially leading to intellectual stagnation.
Wow, strong words.
Very strong. The stark truth presented is, when we cease to grow, we begin to die. Intellectually, at least.
That's a powerful, almost chilling message. So the core purpose of this whole deep dive into reading, ultimately, it's not just to read widely, is it? It's to read well.
That's the heart of it. Read well.
And we want to encourage you, the listener, to seek out those few books, maybe find them through inspectional reading that provide a constant and never-ending challenge to your reading skill. Because, as the source concludes, they're the books that will teach you the most, both about reading and about life.
They're the books you'll want to return to over and over, the ones that will truly help you to grow. Find your desert island books and then read them well.